So we have the task of defining a function called checkInput that takes in a question from the user and error checks the question. Right? So before we go into that, we can go over the challenge exercise. And if you look at this code here, this is basically what you should have after completing the challenge exercise, which is you run main at the bottom, prints out the welcome message. We have this while loop here that's infinite, right? It's always true. So inside the while loop, we are saying, do you want ask the 8-ball a question, taking in the question, raw input, saving it in a variable, running ask. Ask is jumping up here, and it is generating a random number from 1 to 3. And we have this branch statement that says like yes, no, or maybe based on that random roll. And then it's going to come back here and continue on down, print out, do you want to ask another question, and take in the input, right? So, I think this is off actually, because this raw input right here should, maybe we could say here, again, and then they're going to either say yes or no here, right? So there needs to be a branch that says if again is equal to no. Yeah, or again, or maybe we could do dot lower, right? So let's do again dot lower if it's equal to no, because they could type in uppercase no or capital O N capital O, and if that's true, then we want to set answer equal to false, right? And yeah, that looks good to me, right? So, but it makes more sense if this is again actually. So let's say again there, again, takes in again as a yes or a no here. Based on their answer, we're going to set again equal to false. No, I'm not sure if that works. Let's say here, let's call this one something else. Let's say go again. And if go again is equal to no, then we'll set again equal to false, right? So if this never happens, then again will stay true, and it will do it again. Okay, so let's go ahead and run that. And I'm going to ask a question. It's going to say maybe. Do you want to go again? I'm going to say yes, and it's going to go again, right? Ask a question. I say no, and it stops, right? And you might want to even print out like a bye-bye message, right? So say like print something like thanks for coming by, right? Okay, so then now we're on this task here, task number 2, define a function called checkInput that takes in the question from the user and error checks. Okay, so let's go up here. We're going chronological from the bottom up, right? So main was called first, so we have main right above that definition, and then ask is the next function that's called, so we have ask right above that, and we're gonna have our check input here, so we'll say def check underscore input, and then in here you're going to take in the question, right? So let's go ahead and say question is equal to raw underscore input. And we don't need to put anything in the raw underscore input because we already asked them here, right? Like, do you want to enter something in? And now we need to error check it. So how are we going to error check it? We're going to say if, right? And so we say if question. Ooh, maybe we could say if there is a question mark in the question. So we say if question mark not in question. Right. Then we're gonna print out an error message. Print. You have to enter a question, right? No, or you could say maybe we can be a little bit more pointed, and we could say all questions have a question mark. Okay. And then what else do we want to check for? Well, we could say something like elif question is equal to empty string, right? And you gotta say like print. You must enter a question, right? So you can also check for more things than just that, but that's all I have, right? But you could check if it has like more than 4 characters, right? And if it doesn't, then of course then they just pressed ASDF and then hit enter. So yeah, and then we want to say else, right? And else means it passed all of our checks, right? So this check or that check or this check. So it passed all the checks and then got to the else, and we could, I guess, return the question. Okay. So then we need to run check input because we haven't called it in main. So let's go ahead and run it right here, right? So we'll say check input. So then what is this going to do? It's going to jump up here, take in my input, error check, and then return the question if it's a valid question, right? So it's going to jump down to here. Question is going to equal to the question that they entered in. And we do need to save it here because later in our program we're going to analyze that question and take action based on the words that they entered in, right? Yeah, and so everything here is going to run pretty much the same way except we added an error checking. So let's go ahead and ask a question, and maybe I can just hit enter, and it's going to say all questions have a question mark, right? As of right now it says maybe, but we'll go ahead and fix that later. And so we'll say, do you want to ask another question? And we'll say yes. And what am I going to put here? I'm going to put this with no question mark. All questions have a question mark, right? And then I am going to say, ooh, actually this first time here it should have said you must ask a question, but it didn't because this caught before this, right? So we would want to put this first, and then we would want to put this second. And the reason is because this also doesn't have a question mark in it, right? So we want to check for that first. But that's basically what we want to have at the moment, right? Where you can have a crude error checking system.